Better Call Saul, episode 11. Here we go. I like the intro. We go back to the Breaking Bad timeline where they first abduct Saul Goodman, that is Walter and Jesse, and take him out to the desert. And you can hear Saul as the road starts to be bumpy, like, oh, please tell me you're not taking me to the desert, anywhere but the desert. That was funny. But it was just a tease. And then after that intro, we go back to the Gene timeline. And that's something I didn't like about this episode, just the back and forth. You should have given us one episode going back to the Breaking Bad timeline and then just strictly stick with Gene. But it was used for Gene to have a flashback. Maybe having guilt, remorse about like, it's my fault that I pushed Mike and Gus to work with Walter, and that's where it all crumbled from there. Even when Mike told him in the flashback that he was an amateur and if cancer doesn't kill him, a bullet or the cops will. And that's when we see Saul not being okay with that answer, and we see him going back to the high school and try to convince Walter to work together. I like the phone conversation where we saw Saul telling Francesca at this certain date, at this certain time, call this number. But that doesn't make sense because Gene was the one that called her. And people speculated thinking, oh, Francesca's gonna be calling Kim for maybe Kim to get Saul out of his predicament, but that wasn't the case. I like the phone conversation about the aftermath of Breaking Bad versus them showing us. They're simply just telling us what happened after the fact. And we come to find out that the cops, the DEA, is looking for Pinkman and Saul, letting us know that they're not looking for Walter because he's dead, and Skyler got a plea deal by revealing the bodies of Hank Rader and his partner Steve Gomez. We finally got to hear about Dan from the laser tag, that all of his business where he would launder money, Francesca had to give them up for her to get the DA off her back. We hear Saul saying, what about the nail salon? What about laser tag? What about Danny? We got to find out about Hugh. He's okay, he went back home. You see Saul's eyes light up when Francesca tells him that Kim asked about him, which then makes him want to call Kim, and somehow he knows where she is and where she works. Apparently she's in Florida. And then we see that he's calling Kim, but we can't hear anything. And he's arguing, and it kind of was a letdown that, oh, they're not in good terms. Like, what a bummer. Like, what if this was just the first time that they haven't talked since we last saw Kim, but apparently they've been in communication before, for there to be some kind of argument. But who knows, maybe Gene was arguing with Kim's manager and telling Gene that, look, I told you can't call here anymore. So maybe I'm hoping he was arguing with the manager or a co-worker and not really Kim. But I really do hope we see Kim. You know, we got 2 more episodes to go. I really want to find out what she's been up to and if she's living a clean life, which I doubt, but possible. And that cameo, we finally get that cameo of Walter and Jesse. And it makes sense. It's the first time they got together to work together. Saul, Walt, and Jesse. And it's right after they released him from the desert scene. And it was good to see the RV again. And I don't know what it is, but with the hoodies, it made the characters look more like from that time frame, from when they first were filming that show. As far as Jesse's looks and Walter's mustache, it's like they got it right, and not like the weird looking mustache, kind of Hitler-ish from the El Camino movie. And with the beanies on, it hides that weird bald aesthetics he had for the El Camino movie as well. But I think it was just fan service. I didn't really see a need for that in regards to the story. The only thing I can think of is when they show that shot of the hole in the desert, and then it shows Gene in that hole. And I know these guys don't do it for no reason. I mean, sure, it looked cool, but I'm sure they did it for a reason. Is this an indication that it's gonna end bad for Saul? He's gonna end up dead by the end of these last 2 episodes? But it could be too, he looked like he was in jail, just sitting in his jail cell. It could be that he'll end up in jail, especially with the teaser we got after this episode. And sure enough, I was right in some sense, where we saw Gene back at the Cinnabon and he just seemed unhappy and like he missed being Saul, especially right after that scheme that he just did with Jeff. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense because we saw him say goodbye to that character in the last episode, but yet he's still wearing that ring. And what we learn from this show is that Saul just can't help himself and he just needs to keep doing schemes. But for the past 2 seasons, we saw him not making any schemes anymore with Kim, except for the Howard one. Maybe that was the point of the flashbacks, to see that Saul just can't help himself, especially with Mike telling him he didn't want to work with Walter because he was an amateur, but he just wants to have his way. He needs like that thrill just to feel alive, I guess. And when we were seeing yet another scheme, it's like, we've seen this before. I don't want to see Saul do another scheme. But it's as if he's building this capital, but for what? He's not wanting to make money just to make money, I think. He's building that capital for a reason. And when it came to that victim with the cancer, yeah, you could see like, oh, I feel bad. Like, you would think that he would call it off, but he didn't. And then we come to see that he still goes through with it. That definitely had to make him think of Walter White. And then we come to find out when he's arguing with Jeff and that other guy, that he canceled the mission because he felt bad for the guy, especially with his dad having cancer. He felt that this was immoral for him to scheme this guy, seeing that he's already suffering in life. But Gene insisted that they still go through with it. And that was surprising, but we come to find out that just because he has cancer, that doesn't mean he's a jerk. And he's referring to Walter. And because of him, his life has changed. Maybe that's why he couldn't let this one go. Maybe he felt like this was him getting his revenge against Walt, and that he had to scheme this guy for him to get some kind of peace in his mind, clear his conscience or something. Oh yeah, look, it's official. I got plants on my videos. Does that make me an official YouTuber? I thought it was stupid for Gene to go through with this, especially when I saw him break the window. It's like, okay, now you're leaving evidence. Like, that's stupid. But we need this to happen for whatever's gonna happen next, just to build suspense and drama, which I don't agree with. It's not Saul's way. Especially with the flashbacks of Mike talking about how amateur Walt is. Why does Saul feel the need to be amateur with this last scheme? And sure enough, we see a teaser of cops being called for possibly Gene's break-in, but they want us to think that. I'm sure it's nothing. I don't know, I'm just kind of like waiting now. Like, this episode was kind of like nah, but I gotta be patient. If I learn anything from being impatient with the Howard scheme, it definitely paid off. So I have to be patient with this too and see where it pays off. It's kind of like how a comedian tells a really long joke, but then, it's worth it for the payoff. There's too many slow pace in some of these episodes that it's already making me miss the prequel. And I had high hopes for the Gene timeline, but so far I'm being disappointed. Except for the really good parts, like the aftermath that Francesca told Gene. But other than that, it's like, let's just see Saul meet up with Kim and just end it already. Because it seems like there's nothing left to tell, except for Gene's fate, dead or in jail. Because before the second half, they teased us in the trailer that he was going to live a happily ever after life with Kim, but they were just teasing us because it doesn't seem like it's going that way. I did like the break-in, especially with the music. It kind of felt like one of Mike's break-ins that he was doing for Saul, so I enjoyed a little bit of that. But yeah, we have 2 episodes left. What are your guys' thoughts? Where do you think we're going with just 2 episodes left? Did you guys enjoy this episode? Did you enjoy the flashback with the cameo? Let me know your comments below, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.